Hello and welcome back to another Swanscast podcast. And this week, I am very happy to be joined by a very special guest, and that is Kev Johns. I'm sure everybody will know that name who's listening to these podcasts and watching this video. So thank you very much for joining me, Kev, and welcome to Swanscast podcast.
That's a pleasure, mate. And we're a great club, and there's no better than talking to fellow Jacks.
Yeah, and I can't wait to hear all about your stories about Swansea City, going back to the Vetchfield those days, how you became the announcer at the stadium, or the voice of Swansea City, as some people might want to call it. But also, I've grown up in Swansea, and there's another side of yourself and your career that many Swans fans will have seen, and that's going to the Grand Theatre and seeing you maybe dressed up in other clothes to entertain us. So we'll talk all about all of that stuff as we get through this podcast. But yeah, so let's just make a start. For anyone that potentially doesn't know an awful lot about Kev Johns, born and bred in Swansea, 31 years doing pantomime, I believe, if I got that correct.
My goodness, yeah, it sounds awful when you say it, but I started.
That's not awful.
No, I mean, I do other things. I've done musicals, I've done Shakespeare plays, but pantomime is always been a major part of my life. And my first panto was at the Grand Pavilion in Porthcawl, where they have a CF postcode. Yeah, that was back in 1992. Yeah.
Yeah, so a long time, a lot of experience and entertaining, families across Swansea and Porthcawl, I guess, for years and years. You've been an entertainment personality, an actor, journalist, radio host, been on the television, Welsh sitcom High Host, narrated a 4-part series, The Demolition Men.
Yeah.
And yeah, the voice of Swansea City. So when you go to the stadium and you hear that wonderful voice, getting the crowd going, introducing the teams. If you're lucky enough to go to Wembley, we're going to touch on this as well. This is the voice that you will have heard, and we're going to hear a lot more of it today. And also you've got an autobiography, I guess, talking about a lot of this stuff as well. I haven't had the luxury of reading it, but it might be something I put on my Christmas list.
It's cheap enough now, I'm sure. It's been a while since we wrote that, and there were a series of thanks to grants from the Welsh Arts Council. There were a series of us who did it. Myself, Mal Pope did one, Roberto did one, all with the same publisher, and then Truns did one, and it was nice to do, and there's nothing. It makes you, maybe it's feeding ego, but it's just lovely to have something like that, and to know that somebody's actually interested in reading what you've done,
Yeah, and I'm sure there's many people interested in hearing and reading what you've done, and that's what we're going to get into today. So we're better to start than going right back to the beginning, and we'll start with football. So the way this podcast is going to work for those listening, if you want to maybe hop in, hop out, if it's a little bit longer than what you normally listen to, maybe on your commutes, we're going to focus on Swansea City in the football side in the first half, and then we'll go to the other stuff then in the second half. And there's so much to get through. Whether we get through it all, we'll see how we get on, and we'll probably go off on tangents and this, that, the other. But let's go to the beginning. I just want to ask first and foremost, obviously I know you're a big Swansea City fan, you're really involved with the football club. So where did it all begin for you in terms of supporting the Swans and your association then with the club as well?
I'm a Swan supporter, and always have been, and they've been my only team as well. I've only ever supported Swansea City Football Club. My only brief flirtation with another team was when we lived in Colwyn Bay, and I just used to go and watch Colwyn Bay in what was then the North West Counties League, because it was a football match to watch. I lived in. I worked in Liverpool, never went to see Liverpool, never went to see Everton. A couple of times I went to see Tranmere Rovers with a friend at Prenton Park, but I've never had a second club since that first time. My dad took me to the Vetch with Uncle Jack. Now, Uncle Jack wasn't an uncle, but he lived next door. And I grew up at a time where you called everybody uncle, an auntie, whether you were related or not. And we went to see, I think it was a friendly at the end of the season. The Swans were helping out Newport County, who at that time were always struggling and applying for re-election. And we went on the North Bank. And you know what? I was just hooked. I love football then, but to see a game live, And the following season, we got season tickets, and my dad and I used to go every home game to the double decker, which was just notorious. There was one way in, one way out. It was made of wood. Everybody smoked, and you didn't give any thoughts to safety. But you could shout to Tony Millington and the away goalkeeper, and they could hear everything you said. And it was just a wonderful experience. And anybody who stood on the North Bank, that experience you get when you walk up the slope, you just come over the little dip there, especially on an evening game, and you get to see the pitch and smell the turf with the floodlights. It's just a magical experience.
It's something that I unfortunately never got to experience because my father and my parents didn't like football.
No.
So I didn't get into the Swans in terms of being able to go watch them until I was a little bit older. And unfortunately, we had already moved on from the Vetch at that time. I did get into them around then. I used to deliver the Evening Post, and I would kind of get my Swans fix from the back pages because that's all I could get. But it's something I wish I experienced. So hearing stories from yourself and others about what it was like, that's what I got to get my my memories from. So it sounds very interesting, and I'd imagine you just can't replicate that these days, and it must be something that's definitely missed by a lot of people.
Oh, there was a great atmosphere there, and to skip on a few years just for a moment, when I started doing the introductions and the entertainment or whatever on the pitch, I used to remember with a radio mic, I used to stand on the wall of the North Bank and getting everybody to sing Delilah or whatever the songs we were singing were at the time, and it was just a magical experience, and something that I will never ever forget. And it's probably some of the greatest experiences of my life have involved Swansea City.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will share that as well. And recent memories, the rise up through the leagues. I think Swansea City is such an important part of so many people's lives. But you're obviously connected in such a big way, and you just touched on it there. But you're doing the introductions. So I want to ask, how did that come about then? So you're a Swans fan, used to go with your dad, season ticket holder. But how did you become the voice of the stadium?
I was working with a company in London who they did all the promotion for what was the Coca-Cola Cup and then became the Worthington Cup. So right throughout the life of the cup, I would go to different places. We would have fans five-a-side tournaments, and then when the Wembley final came, I went on the pitch at halftime, introduced the two final teams, and they would play a kind of five-a-side game on the pitch at Wembley. And I remember I was working for Swansea Sound. I was chatting to one of the guys from the Evening Post one day, and he said, "What are you doing the weekend?" I said, "Well, Saturday I'll go up to London, and Sunday then I'll be doing this, pitch stuff at Wembley." I said, "Oh, there's an interesting story." I said, "There's no story really. It's just what I do. It's just a bit of work." And they wrote a story, a tiny little piece in the Evening Post, saying the Swans may have not made it to the Wembley final, but the city will be represented. And they said that I was doing it. And one of the guys from the Swans rang up and he said, "I just read this story about you." I said, "Oh yeah, well no." He said, "Why don't you do that for us?" And I said, "You've never asked me." And he said, "Well, I'm asking." I said, well, I'll do it." He said, "We can't afford to pay you." I said, "I'm not asking for any money." And I just had some tickets for myself, my dad, my son, and that's what we did for many, many years. I just went there to watch the game, and I would have been there anyway. So I thought, well, I may as well do something. So that's how I started, introducing the teams, and we started doing the penalty shootouts at half time. And people say, "Oh, the penalty shootout's gone for a long time," but the kids who take part in the penalty shootout absolutely love it.
Yeah.
And it's an unforgettable experience for them, particularly at the stadium we're at now, this incredible modern stadium, and they can go out on the pitch wearing the same kit as their heroes, and they take the penalties at Cyril Swan. But for them, it's a magical experience.
No, and you know what? I actually have a colleague in work who recently had their child take part in that, and talking to me, obviously know when I do this, about the experience and what they saw the child enjoying that experience, and you could just see the face light up when talking
Yeah.
about it and how much it meant to them and how much they enjoyed it. Definitely going to do it again. So I think that is definitely important, and is something that you want to obviously inspire the next generation to continue to come to the stadium and want to follow their heroes, and think there's a chance maybe of being one of them one day, I guess. And it's a small
But
part of that, isn't it?
it's not just about creating and finding football players for the future. Obviously, we have an academy which is doing a magnificent job in identifying local talent, but we have to identify fans of the future,
Yeah,
fans who, like myself, went with their parents or with their dads to watch the Swans. You know, eight. I think I was 8 when I first went there, and I'm still now watching the Swans all those years later. So I started in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000 teens and 2020s, and I'm still watching the Swans, you know. And whilst I do have a role there on match day, I'd be there anyway.
yeah, exactly. And in your role as stadium announcer, if that's what we'll call it, I'm
Okay.
guessing you got more involved within the club. Can you talk
Yeah,
about any of your involvement during the time at the Vetch as well? Then,
there was some. One of the most memorable moments, sadly, is a moment I wish had never happened. It was when we lost dear Terry Coles at Rotherham, and that was quite a day of mixed emotions because, strictly speaking, it should have been a day of celebration. We if we won, we would go up as champions. If they won, I think they would have gone top, but we still would have gone up. Whatever happened at the end of that game, whoever won, lost, or if it was a draw, which it was, both sides would have been promoted from League Two to League One. And I guess at that level, it's not about being champions; it's about getting out of the division and getting to a
yeah,
higher division. So it should have been a celebration of football. And I remember getting there early with my family, and I got in. We got in early, and we were walking up this lane. And I understand later on, it got fuller as fans came in, and some of the home fans, they started throwing things at at our fans, and the police made a decision to get involved, and you know the story of the horse that came down a lane which was a very narrow lane, and sadly there was a collision with dear Terry Coles, who was coming into the game with his friends, and he died as a result of his injuries. So that was the final game of the season. With the game was a draw, we were champions. There were no celebrations. The following day, we all kind of gathered at the Vetch. The club opened the ground, and people were coming in and bringing flowers. And I'll never forget, on the Monday, completely different. I was on my way to London to have a photograph taken for the Panto poster. It was my first role as Dame, and I was going up on the train to have a photo taken with the company. And I had a phone call saying, "Look, tomorrow night we were playing Aston Villa." It was Keith Walker's testimonial, and the Aston Villa, John Gregory, he was bringing his full team. He brought his full team. They were playing in a cup final on the following Saturday, but there was the full team: Gareth Southgate, David James, and all those great Villa names. And they came, and they asked if I would just lead a prayer into a minute's silence, which Swans fans are very good at doing, and still to this day are excellent at
yeah,
doing. And I just led this little prayer for Terry's family and his friends, and we had the silence. And that's why I'll always have great respect for Gareth Southgate, even though he, is the England manager now, and I'm a Welsh football fan. But he came, and he was. Well, I went into the Villa dressing room before the game just to explain what we were doing, how we were going to do it, and they were most concerned. And I hadn't had any involvement with Terry's family; they had their own, backup and support. I was just doing that for the Swans, and he was most concerned. How are the family? How are they doing? Will you pass on my regards? and they brought a wreath to lay. And so I have great respect for them as a club and for him as a sportsman. And that was very emotional. And that night, when I asked them to bow their heads in silence, you literally could have heard a pin drop. There was 100% no mobile phones went off, nobody shouted, no one was late coming into the game. It was remarkable, and that probably was one of the most memorable moments there. And then of course, our last game, our last league game at the Vetch, we sung the national anthem. We had entertainment galore on the pitch that day. That was a memorable day as we said farewell to a ground that had served us so well and given us so many memories. And we were moving on to pastures new. And the stadium is, what was the Liberty and now the Swansea.com stadium has created new memories for us. And I always believe that the night that we played Nottingham Forest in that playoff semi-final was the night that the stadium discovered its voice. And I've been to rugby internationals, and I've heard hymns and arias. I've done shows with Max Boyce in theatre shows, and he's led the audience in singing, but I've never heard hymns and arias sung like the Swans, like Jack Army sung it that night, and it came from nowhere. And so both stadiums have given us incredible memories and wonderful moments. A few tear-jerkers as well, but a few special times.
Definitely plenty of special times. That's a touching story there. Kind of shows maybe the darker past of parts of football, but also a touching part of what also can be brought together by the community feel in the sport, and Swansea and Aston Villa in this occasion have offered. And it's quite nice to hear that, as much as it is probably an emotional, memory and time. So I've gone through.
It is banter, We don't hate anybody, and there's rivalry between Swansea and Cardiff, Cardiff and Bristol City, Sunderland, and Newcastle. I've lived in Liverpool, so I know the rivalry, not just in a city, but in a house. You could get a family of four. Two will be Liverpool supporters, two will be Everton supporters, and it's banter. It's banter, But at the end of the day, when you lose someone, people should come together. There are always going to be a few idiots, but when you lose somebody, you show the sympathy and show the love and the respect that person deserves.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about, isn't it? At the end of the day, we all are enjoying the same thing. So as a collective, it's good to celebrate that and come together in those moments as well. Before we maybe move on from the Vetch as a whole, there was one other occasion I wanted to talk to you about, and it's maybe not also the best memory, but I guess it's bittersweet in a way. And that's the period in 2002 when Tony Petty was forced out or left, however you want to put it. And I would just like to hear your account, really, about your involvement, if that's something you're happy to talk about. Because I know you were involved, and a lot of good has come from that, really, for the club. It kind of sent us up on the trajectory of where we are today, and we're not at the peak anymore, but in recent memory we have been, and that's a big part of that story. We had the documentary Jack the King that talked a lot about it as well. But some of the younger fans might not have seen that. They might not be fully aware of who Tony Petty was and what happened back then. So I feel like who better to kind of talk about that moment in our history.
Well, he came from nowhere, and all of a sudden this guy owns the club, and we're putting people's jobs at risk and players' careers at risk, and he bought the club for next to nothing, and knew he didn't know anything about football, to be honest with you. He didn't know anything at all about it, and I did get involved. And there were some things happened behind the scenes. I used contacts that I had through the radio, through connections with the council to try and help the guys who were putting up the money and trying to buy the club off him. And the worst day was I had a phone call from somebody saying Tony Petty had put a story out that we set up the Supporters Trust. And I hosted this incredible meeting in the Party Pavilion, which launched, and everybody signed up for the Supporters Trust, and players came and spoke so eloquently and passionately about what was going on, putting their own jobs at risk in doing that. And all of a sudden, I had this phone call saying that a story was going around that in opposition to the Supporters Trust, they were setting up a supporters board. And Tony Petty was setting up a supporters board, and and I was on the supporters board. I didn't know anything about it. No one was spoken to me about it, and I didn't want anything to do with it. And I got a little bit angry, so angry that somebody said to somebody, "You better ring Kevin and calm him down." Um, and I said to family, I said, "Look, I said I just Leslie were playing at home, and I said, let's go and watch the Reds. Let's go down there." And we went into the Jock Stein suite because Vic Gomersall has always been a friend, and Vic was the commercial manager at the time. And he saw us coming. He said, "Come in for a cup of tea." And I walked into the Jock Stein suite, and who was the first person I bumped into? Tony Petty was there with Colin Addison, the manager. I thought, flip it heck. And we'd had a face to face, and I got a bit emotional. I said, "Please don't mess up with my football club." And then he came in one day to do the phone-in program on a Sunday morning that I hosted on Swansea. He said, "A man alive, he took a battering. Oh my goodness, he was almost shaking, you know." And that was the last I saw of him. And
was that the final straw then for him to?
Yeah, I think. Do you know what? I think so. I think he needed. I think the final straw was the game we played. Was it against Orient? And we'd had a demonstration march through the city, which one of the guys at the club said, "What's going on? You're on the pitch representing us, and then you lead in the march." And I said, "Look, my priorities is Swansea City Football Club. It's the club I love." And he took a real battering that day, and they were Orient supporters on the march with us, which is why Swansea City fans will always have great respect again for Orient fans because what they did. And the boys then were able to do a deal and can just buy the football club back off him, which is all public knowledge and well known. But there was still a lot of work to do. They still had a lot of stuff to do, and Nick Cusack and Roger Freestone stepped in, and maybe they weren't ready for that position, but they stepped in. And then Flinny came, and is a man that I couldn't love him more if he was my father. And Flinny came, and he brought in players like Leon and Tatey and Truns, and we managed to win that game and protect our status as a football league club. And who knows what would have happened if that had gone differently. Look at Wrexham. Wrexham, was it 15, 16 years they were out of the football league trying to get back in, and it's taken them until this past year to get back, and who knows what would have happened.
So were you involved at all with the direction of the new ownership at that time, or were they just people who were sort of put their hands up to take over the running of the money up? And
they were guys that I knew, and guys that I respected and a great deal of affection for. But I wasn't myself in a financial position to be able to do what they did. So our job then was to support them and to give them all the help they need, and to host any meetings they were having, to do any fundraising projects that they were having, and to use any contacts that we had to help them. But Hugh Jenkins, Martin, Dave Morgan, and those guys, John Van Sweden, and I'm going to forget somebody, so I'm going to stop naming names there. They did their best, and to pay the wages and to keep the gates open, and the fans, the football trust, the supporters trust rather, they were absolutely magnificent. They held them, and supporters chipped in to pay players' wages. And it was what supporters did was absolutely fantastic. And remember that the guys who stepped forward, they were just that. They were supporters one week and local businessmen, yes, but they were supporters. Next thing, they have the responsibility for running the football club. And, whatever has happened since, we mustn't forget that.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember where it came from. People can remember the more recent history with certain opinions, but also look at the wider football league, and there's other clubs that what you were just saying isn't too unfamiliar with other clubs currently or in recent years, in the last year or two. And it wasn't, it was us not that long ago. So whenever you think about how things are right now, just remember that time, I think, is always an important message from what you've just said, because we were on the brink of what could have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
But, we're still in a quite a tidy position when it comes to the reality of the situation. And
I
yeah.
always think that the two most difficult divisions or leagues to get out of are the Championship. Why? Because it's full of ex-Premier League clubs with
Yeah.
Premier League budgets. And the other one that's hard to get out of is the Conference, or whatever they call the Conference now. But that is full of ex-league teams. If you look through that league, they're all ex-league teams. They've all
Yeah.
played in the football leagues, and some at quite, a good level. And it's hard to get out. And I'm too frightened to think what would have happened. But we won that game against Hull, and we went up. It was Exeter's day. It was our day. That was our first day, and and from that moment on, great things happened. Incredible things happened.
Yeah, they did indeed. And I want to maybe move on to some of those incredible things. And considering you just mentioned that quote, if you like, we'll go straight on to that, because, the transition and all that, you nailed it. But I want to play a little clip and then we'll talk about it.
Okay.
But maybe one of your most memorable moments in your role as the voice of Swansea City was the playoff final.
Yeah.
And the speech you did before the game. You can compare it directly, because there's two teams in this playoff final, Swansea against Reading, and you can compare directly how both teams were introduced, and it set the day up, and obviously the result followed. But I just think it makes a massive difference to the fan experience, the atmosphere, the sort of like the motivation even of the fans, of the players. You just build everyone up. But I'm going to play it now because it's a little bit trip down memory lane, and some fans might not have been lucky enough to go, and some younger fans, maybe they haven't heard it yet. But this is Kev Johns getting us all going on the playoff final. That is, that's historic. That is part of folklore, part of our culture, our history, everything. Everyone remembers that. It's so important, such an important speech. I just want to, where did it come from? Like, where did that come from? Was it just spontaneously, just came out? Or did you plan it? I would just love to know sort of the background, the history of that speech.
I didn't plan anything. I just thought I was going to go on there and get him singing the Swansea City song. That's what had happened in the past. But then the guy from Reading, he went first. And he went out there and he said, he more or less said, it's not about the team that's playing today. It's about and he just read all these names of Reading players and squad members. And he had a clipboard. I'm always wary of anybody who's got a clipboard. And he introduced the song, Don't Stop Believing. And the only thing I had in my mind is I was going to go on I was kicking myself, saying, "Look at this guy; he's prepared. What have you got, John? Nothing. This is why you don't get anywhere in life. This is why you haven't got on, because you don't prepare. You don't, you know." And the only thing I had in mind is I was going to go on and do the gag about they sang a song from Glee, and I went on there, and I kind of got a bit emotional because I thought of all the Swans fans who weren't there that day. My own dad had recently had heart surgery; he wasn't there. I thought of Reg Pike, who had served the club for years, Major Pike, who wasn't with us any longer, and lots of others. In fact, even looking at that clip now, there I saw somebody in the crowd who'd lost somebody important to them, and I'd spoken at the funeral service, so I can see now there were others there, and I got a bit emotional. So that's where the Our Day, this is Our Day came from, and then they shouted. I thought, oh, I'm going to say it again, and there was somebody waiting on the side from the production company who had taken over from the company that I used to work for, doing Worthington stuff. So I knew him, and he had somebody, and they were waiting to pull me off. I thought, I'm going nowhere. But I knew that if I didn't go anywhere, they switched my microphone off. So I got into the song, and then they pulled me off. But it was a very special day, you know. And when we went, I was sitting in the press box, and when I went 1-0 up, I knew. And somebody from the Football League came down and told me that we don't behave like that in the press box. Because in the press box, you're not supposed to wear colours. You're not supposed to show allegiance. You're supposed to be independent members of the press. No chance. When we went 2-0 up, I jumped up again. He gave me a filthy look. When we went 3-0 up, I ran the whole length of the press box, high-fived all the boys from BBC Radio Wales, except Jason Mohammed.
That's important. That is. That's very important.
Him.
You're going to get blocked now.
and I will be blocked. And I kissed Lee Trundle on the lips, and I swear to this day he closed his eyes. And I went back, and then the guy then was like, I think he was really ready to kick me out. And I apologized. I said, "Oh, sorry, I got over," because I didn't want to miss out the halftime buffet in the press box, because they had like really good stuff there. I'd seen the buffet when I'm not missing that out. Hat, salmon, cream cheese, everything. So and then when we went 4-2 up, because they came back to 3-2.
Yeah, and then there was a block by Monk, wasn't there?
That to me
it could have been 3-0.
That to me was the most important moment of that game. That block by Gary Monk, because if they'd have gone 3-3, they would have had the impetus. I think we would have lost the game. They would have gone.
I agree.
And but we the crowd, we won it, and I've spoken to Reading supporters who were there and said when you went on, we knew we had lost the atmosphere advantage, because it kind of took the Glee gag took the wind out of their sails. And I've got a friend who's from Reading. He was there in the Reading in that day, and he said, "Oh, you fans, you all murdered us." And we won the game, and we got in the Premier League. We were in the Premier League 7 seasons. They gave us more chance of finding Elvis alive than staying up that first season. And we had some magnificent moments in the Premier League, and that's why I remember talking to a Cardiff fan in Greggs before an international just by their stadium, and they had their first season in the Premier League, and they had all that trouble going on off the pitch with their ownership, and they didn't enjoy their season in the Premier League. And he admitted, he said, "You're right," And even though towards the end of that period, we had some great matches in that Premier League.
Yeah,
and we had some great victories. We beat some of the biggest names in Premier League football, and we got into Europe, and we had a great time. And football is a funny old game, and you know what? It may not seem like it today, but our day will come again. Our day will come again. I know it will. It might take a season, it might take 2 seasons or 3 seasons, but whatever happens between now and then, we'll still keep going to the Swans and enjoying the football.
That's a tremendous account of your matchday experience from the playoff final. If we ever do get Lee Trundle to come and grace our presence here, I'll ask him how he felt about that moment between yourself and him.
Well,
how intimate it was.
I drove up and back on the day, and I remember getting to the Severn Bridge, and they were toll fees at the time, and there was a huge queue of people waiting to get back over, all Swans fans, and Trundle was in a car which had a sunroof, and he was parked in. They were stuck in the jam, and Trundle was out of the roof like the American president, waving and getting everybody singing, and Lee is Swansea through and through, and they all are. Leon Britton, I see Leon a lot. I see Lee a lot because we all work together on match day doing hospitality, pre-match hospitality, and those boys are, whatever their accents are, they are Swansea through and through. They still live in a city, and you'd be surprised how many Swansea City players have come from other parts of the UK, but when their careers are over, they've stayed in Swansea. Angel Rangel still lives locally. Alan Tate, he's up in Forest at the moment, but where's his home? Local, Ponadawe. Still lives here. And that such is the affection that they have and people have for them.
Yeah, it'd be great if it was. I'm obviously, I guess after you retired, they want to move on, but I think fans' nostalgia, they'd love to see more of the past players in some capacity. I don't know what that is,
Absolutely.
but it'd be good if there was some way of them getting included in the club. Some of the others that maybe are a bit quieter, like Rangel you mentioned, that would be something good to see maybe in the future. But we all know you do hospitality and you do it so well and look after us on the match days. Have you had any highlights then from in the Liberty Stadium or the Swansea.com Stadium? We talked about some of your moments from the Vetch. I know we've talked about the playoffs and the playoff final. It's quite a long period now to talk about for the new ground, which isn't so new anymore, but maybe some highlights across both our time in the Championship and Premier League that you would like to talk about.
I love that day we beat Bristol City. Was it 7-0, 7-1? That was one of my favourite Liberty games. And the night we beat Forest and Brendan went running off down the touchline and suddenly realised that he was doing that on national television, probably international television. And that was a great moment as well. And do you know what? The supporters they're just magnificent. And we do get sometimes in hospitality fans who they're going through tough times. And the joy that football club brings to them is incredible. And a lady died recently, Catherine, who was she was disabled, and in some ways life had not been kind to her, and she passed away this season. And I remember she came into hospitality on the first day of the first game of the season. Is it Birmingham City we played?
Yeah.
And she said to me, "Oh, Kevin," she said, I am so excited. I woke up this morning, I was singing, knowing that she was back watching the Swans. And I remember her her dad had a bit of a business role and a bit of an influence at the club. She used to sit in the director's box, and I remember her having a go at the referee. And she's been supporting the Swans since she was a child. And you when you meet those people and you meet fellow supporters, it's that's what the club is all about.
Yeah.
Players come, managers come. Boy, the managers flipping come and go. Players,
especially these days.
Yes, players come and go. Well, the one thing that is consistent is the Jack Army. People who have supported this club for years. Some have come on board in recent days, but are solid Swansea City supporters. And that's why I love working with the commercial and the media department, because that it's not a job to them. It's, they are all Swansea City supporters through and through. And they love what they do, and they love the Swans. They love the club.
No, they do indeed, and that definitely comes across with what we see as well. Speaking of the media department, I was having a look around before this chat and found a video of you singing Carpool Karaoke a couple of years ago. 7 years ago, I think it
I
was.
didn't know the words. I didn't know what the song was. I didn't know
I
any of
did
the words.
notice. I did notice, but that's fine. That's not what I was going to ask you. I'm not going to ask you to sing. Don't worry.
Oh, thank goodness
But I
for
did
that.
pick up on something from the video. We talked about Wembley.
I plug in
We're
my
gonna-
laptop and keep talking.
That's all right. That's all right. You go do that. We talked about Wembley already from our first visit. We'll talk about our second, and we got the third one's not so good. Maybe we'll touch on it. Maybe we won't. But the second visit, obviously the Capital One Cup final. There's a little bit of a story about champagne. I'm wondering if you could share a little bit of that with us.
Well, we won the cup, and I was doing some work with the media department, which meant I was able to go into the dressing room after the game. And Chico,
Of course, it was Chico. Of course, it was
yeah,
Chico.
not Chico ice skating Chico, because I know him as, but Chico Flores came behind me, and he poured a bottle of champagne or beer or something over my head. Now, it was all right for the players to do that because they had access to showers, towels, and a change of clothes. It was freezing cold that day. It was like I've never known it so cold.
What was it, February?
Yeah,
February,
February.
yeah.
I had a suit on and I had my duffel coat on. All right. And that's all I had. And I got covered in alcohol. And I had to go home smelling like a brewery. And I got home and my wife said to me, she said, "You stink." And I'm not a drinker. I don't. And I said, "I know." And I said, "You won't believe it." I said, "I was in the dressing room." And she said, "Well," and somebody poured over me. That's a stupid thing to do. And I said, "You don't get it." I said, "I've been a Swan supporter since I was 8. And we won a cup final at Wembley. And I'm in the dressing room with the team after they won a cup final. You can't buy an experience like that."
No.
And the comment actually was, "Well, you're lucky that Morrison's dry cleaned 3 items for £15, because that meant I could get my suit, jacket, trousers, and my top and my duffel clean for 15 quid." But you can't. You know what? If I had one of those, lifetime experience opportunities, that would
Definitely
be
wouldn't cost £15, would it? It would be more than £15.
Yeah, 15 quid, flipping heck,
And
Can't buy that on Virgin Experiences.
no, definitely not. And you know what? If we get to the playoffs this year and get to the playoff final, you'd be paying more than £15 for that deal this year. That's for sure.
I'd love it, as long as it won't like the last one.
But no, that's a money can't buy experience. I think a lot of fans would enjoy that. Lap up all the champagne from Chico Flores in the dressing rooms after the cup final win. Obviously, that sent us on our European trip.
I loved him. I remember there was a wonderful dinner at the stadium. Angel Rangel and his lovely wife Nikki, they'd been out in town, and they'd seen whatever they were eating. They were seeing this food that was being thrown out at the end of the night, and they intervened. They got the food. They took it to a homeless shelter, and they wanted to do something for the homeless. So they put on a dinner, which I hosted at the stadium, and all the players came, and it was a great night. Everybody did everything for free. The PA, the singers, everybody. And Chico came up. He went, "Kevin," I'm doing a Spanish accent here, "I love you." And his English wasn't very good at the time. "I love you like a sister." I said, "What?" "I love you like a sister." And then Angel whispered, and he goes, No, I mean brother. He was such a personality, great footballer as well. And I kind of love that team, I love that generation, Teti and Monks and Leon and Truns and Angel and the other Spanish boys. They were such a joy, and they were always, and Roberto, they always made themselves available to the city. I'm not saying that the guys do that today, but they were always out, and they went to the same pubs, they went to the same clubs, they shopped in the same shops as everybody, and everybody had access to them. And there was a wonderful connection between the club and the fan base.
My favourite period as well is the Brendan Laudrup sort of squad, that sort of time. Is definitely, in terms of the players, and you mentioned some of them there, that's definitely my highlights. And those players took us into our European adventure.
Yeah.
Did you manage to go any of to those away trips, or what highlights?
I never went abroad. But the highlights, when we played the Swiss club and they all marched, like they marched them up from the railway station, and there were flares going off, and the Russian one, I had to name the Russian side, and I'd done Russian in school, in Denera school back in the 70s. We did Russian. I wasn't very good, and I went up to the interpreter. I went, "Здравствуйте, как тебя зовут?" And he thought I spoke Russian. I only know about 5 sentences, and but those were magical nights, and we did ourselves great credibility. You know, we came out through that period, and it lasted when it lasted, and it ended when it ended. But
Yeah.
it was a marvelous experience for club and fan base, and I loved that team. But saying that, today's team, Matt Grimes is a great supporter. He's involved with Stand Up for Downs, the local Down syndrome charity. He's lots of players do things that you don't always get to see, but still, Trundle is out there. Leon is out there supporting the club and the community.
Yeah, it would be lovely to see some of the current squad when their time does come, if they can. We get a few more of them legends, if you like, the stick around ambassadors. I think there's a couple that have been here long enough to get into that mold, but
I
time
think
will
Matt
tell what
Grimes,
happens.
I put Matt Grimes in that category.
I just hope he
He's
retires here. That's what I mean. Retire here, stay here. I would love it. We'd maybe be lucky for that to happen, but we'll have to wait and see. Just to end on that passage of what we were chatting about then, you did just mention it. It ended when it ended. I just want to ask about your thoughts then about the end. Obviously, we talked about the introduction of the ownership that led us on a successful journey. They are no longer with us. We obviously have a new ownership team now. We've got some American owners, and there's been a lot of change even in the last year or so in regards to the top end of the club. But from the inside, and you might not know an awful lot, but I think fans just love to know any little details they can. The changeover and that period. Is there anything you can share about your thoughts really on that time and how that went down? And a lot of fans maybe struggle with it. So just curious if you've got anything to add and to give us any sort of information really in that time.
Do you know what? This may seem like a cop, but I don't get that information now.
No, that's
I,
fair. Yeah.
the only thing I would say, there was a forum, a fans forum, recently at the stadium, and all the senior guys were there, including the chairman, and I thought he was incredibly honest and upfront with everybody. And I was down the opening of the fourth boot room, which is a remarkable charity, which I'm sure you know lots about. And they opened up a fourth boot room in the hub down in the Mumbles, and they were all explaining, what they needed at the moment. They needed more space, and they were explaining that they needed some storage space, and they were going to buy some containers, the big containers, and that will hopefully would help the problem. And they'd have to raise the money for it. And the chairman interrupted. The chairman of the Swans was there as a guest, and he said, "How much is that going to cost you?" And he said, "About $2.5 grand." And he said, "Well, we'll cover that. We'll." And I thought that was a lovely moment. He didn't have to
Is
say
this
that.
Andy Coleman?
Andy Coleman, yeah.
Yeah,
And I mean, I came up with a gag. I said, yeah, it was nice of Andy to do that. He responded quickly and asked how much it would cost. I said, I would have said $4 grand and go $4 grand out of it, But you speak as you find, and those are my experiences so far. And, I've not had the best of health in recent weeks, and we can talk about that if you want later.
Yeah.
But they were very kind to me and very supportive of me during that period. And you have to speak as you find. And, I'm sure not everything is perfect, and I'm sure not everything is right. I'm sure mistakes will be made because people are human, and whenever there are humans, mistakes will be made. But in terms of supporting the club, supporting the team, we always have to be 100% behind our team.
No, I understand. And I know it's a difficult question. I think I was coming out from the perspective. Obviously, you dealt with the changeover of past, which was for me a lot more toxic. This one happened in maybe a more successful time, and as much as some fans have criticism, don't like certain things that have happened,
Yeah,
as I touched on earlier, really, it's a reminder of what it could have been. It could have been. It could still be a lot worse. It's not end of the world, I think, and
yeah,
there is learnings to be had, as you've just said. That it isn't perfect, and that's fine. But what club is really? That a lot of clubs have got
yeah.
issues and stuff they need to iron out, and people trying
What I
to
would
make
say
decisions to
is
make better.
everybody who goes into that game on a match day, whether they be a season ticket holder or a match holder, they have paid good money for their season ticket.
Yeah,
They pay good money for their ticket. So, whatever their opinion is, they have every right to express that opinion publicly and privately. The only thing I hope sometimes people would do is they would just maybe give some thought to how they express that opinion.
yeah.
And, and let's never let it get nasty. Let's
I
remember
think
that
that's
people are human beings and have feelings, and we have every right to express our feelings. Because, as I said, in 10 years' time, the ownership, the management, the playing makeup will be totally different, maybe, but
yeah.
we'll still be there. You and I will still be there watching the Swans. Tons will still be there watching the Swans. And those guys who sit in the East Stand, in the South Stand, the West Stand, and parts of the North Stand, they will still be there paying good money. So people have the right to their opinion. I just wish sometimes, do we always need to be so hurtful?
No, I totally agree, and I think that sums it up well, and yeah, well said, really. Okay, so I haven't got too much more to talk about when it comes to maybe the history of the Swans, but I want to touch on today the current performance, the current ongoings. Obviously, we've got Michael Duff in charge. How do you think right now? What's your honest opinions on where we are as a football club right now?
I think that this season saw massive changes, didn't it? We had a complete change in management, in coaching
Yeah,
staff. You know, when Russell went to Southampton, he took some good buys, Gilly, and he took some good boys with him, and we brought in a new manager and a new sporting director who brought in, I think, was it 13 new players
yeah,
to the
13.
club, some of whom I think are amazing. You know, I'm a
Yeah,
massive fan of Josh, who's come from Exeter, a fullback who's been injured these last few weeks, and I think his lack of presence on the pitch, we've missed it. You know, and I
definitely.
think when we get it right, we get it right. And unfortunately, there have been some down days, and the Cardiff game was dreadful, and everybody admits that it was dreadful, and that is such an important game to both sets of supporters. And the last, 4 games have been absolutely magnificent. And that day, it was a poor game. I don't think any side came out of it with shining glory. It's just that the Cardiff City won it at home, and we didn't win it. But then we went on that little run, which was spectacular. I thought we played
Yeah,
against Leicester. I thought we were amazing. I've never enjoyed losing 3-1 in all my life. Um, you know, and it's still early days, and I understand fans' frustration, and I, you know, I stand at the back of the stand so people can't hear what I'm saying sometimes, and what I'm shouting. And Vic Gomersall stands next to him, which is to me a magnificent thing. Vic Gomersall, when I started watching the Swans, was my hero. I played as a junior footballer. I was a fullback, right back. He was a left back. He was my hero, and I stand at the back of the press box watching the game with Vic Gomersall, for goodness sake. And we also when we Trundle and I do a Q&A in hospitality, we have promised that we'll always be honest. And if we're playing poorly we'll say we're playing poorly. If poor decisions have been made, we'll say it. Because what's the point of saying anything different? Because
Yeah.
those that you're speaking to are watching the same game as you, so you can't go and say, "Well, I thought we were brilliant today. We were outstanding," and we've had some poor refereeing decisions, particularly in the last home game. Some dreadful decisions, but you have to be honest, and I understand fans' frustrations, but I'm sure we'll get it right. We're not that far off it, are we? We're not
No.
that far off it, and
No.
we're not far off the
We
top. We're not that far off the bottom, unfortunately.
yeah, kind of in the middle, isn't it? It's kind
We're
of
in the
like
middle, and
equal.
let's hope that when we're back to full strength and we get a full team out there, that things will turn our favour.
Yeah, obviously we talk about this sort of stuff every week here on the podcast.
All the
This is
time,
what we
man.
do.
Yeah.
No, but like, so I just wanted to get your opinions because we see all the fan reaction, we discuss it. I personally think some of it is a bit over the top sometimes when we lose, which is fine. People can air their opinions, but I guess we like to then add context in and calm everyone down sometimes. But it is a process. It is like a long work in progress, if you like. And I think maybe we need a few more bodies in January in some areas that we didn't necessarily plan for in the summer because we feel that we planned for a different formation.
Yeah.
And I think that's important in terms of where we are now with our injury situation. It has highlighted areas that we don't have that many options, but we need time maybe to build that and to get that right before a season-long sustained push can really happen in reality.
I have never gone into that stadium thinking the Swans are going to lose.
Yeah.
If you were playing Manchester City, Manchester United, Arsenal, Spurs, Liverpool, or we were playing, I don't know, we played them once, Horsham in the fourth round of the third round of the FA Cup. I've still gone into that stadium believing we're going to win this game. So when we don't win the game, I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
Because my expectations, I have never been so disappointed as I was after that game against Brentford at Wembley. Because we've been.
Oh, there we are. There's the third. There's the third one. Carry on.
I was so disappointed that day. For me, it was a glorious day. I had a wonderful welcome from supporters, and the Swans treated my wife and I to hospitality in Wembley that day, and it was just. We'd stayed in the Premier Inn the night before, which was full of Swans fans, and there were no Brentford fans there. They didn't need to be there. They only lived around the corner. They could walk to the game, for goodness' sake.
Yeah.
And that we took a walk around Wembley on the Friday night and the Saturday morning. We had food in the Premier Inn. It was just wow! It was so excited, and it was wonderful, And then it was like such a disappointing game.
Okay, quick one then. Jay Felton's red card, yes or no?
No.
No, I agree. I feel like, it was no intent at all. Not that necessarily matters, but I feel like he slipped into it, and tricky one.
Jay Fulton's an experienced Swan player. He's an experienced Swansea City player. It was a massive moment for him playing in a game at Wembley that could have taken his club into the Premier League. People lose their heads, I know, but no, not Jay. It wasn't. It wasn't.
No,
I don't think any of the red cards that we've had in the last two games are red cards either.
I agree on that completely. We talked about that actually yesterday in our podcast. The first one of which was confirmed by PGMOL that both yellows were incorrect. I haven't seen anything about the Liam Cullen ones, but personally, I don't think he was involved in whatever way in the handbags that led to his first yellow card. And the second one, I think Ashby probably brings the player down personally.
And what I like, Michael, people have mixed opinions on Michael as manager, but he's had yellow cards, which means he's lipping, and that shows passion. That he was incensed or whatever. That he enough to get it, and he's on 2 yellows now, I think, isn't he? Yeah, he had one in the last game, didn't he?
and maybe the
And
previous one
in the
before. But
first game that we talking about, we have a referee where every time
yeah,
he referees a game, people tend more talking about him than they do about the game.
yeah. Well, I mean, there's enough to be said about that. We were questioning how the system of you're not good enough for the Premier League, so you can go and referee in the Championship is that's not a solution because then another club's just got to suffer. But because you're not in the Premier League, it doesn't matter. That's kind of the message it sends to me anyway. I'm not saying he should lose his job, but that's not really correcting the problems of
Mynydd
why he
Newydd, I
got put there.
put him up Mynydd Newydd, then he'd learn how to referee.
Yeah, got to play football
Penland
for a match.
versus, I don't know, Penland versus the Malsters, then I'll sort him out.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well that's obviously a lot about football. I just want to end the football section with some quick fire questions. I don't want any thought into this really. Just raw. First thing comes to your head, I guess. A little bit of fun. Okay, so I've got a few things down here. We'll see how we get on if I ask them all or not. So let's start. So
Go on,
favorite ever Swansea City player.
I love
That's
Vic
easy one.
Gormsel. I love Curtis Trundle. There's loads, man. I'm going to say Vic Gormsel. And
Okay.
Lee Trundle because he'll get upset.
Well. If he can come and tell us about why he's upset if he wants to. But favorite goal at the club that you've ever seen.
Any goal scored by Leon Britton, especially if he scores with his head.
Playoff semi.
Yeah, that one. Pratley's goal against that was against Forest. Was probably,
Brendan scored in that game as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. But Pratley's goal. Yeah.
Best ever Swansea manager in your opinion?
Oh my goodness.
They don't get it. They don't get easier.
It's got to be between Flinney and Roberto.
Okay. Favorite goal? I meant to ask originally favorite goal of the Vetch, but you gave me one of the Liberty, so I'll flip it. Favorite goal of the Vetch?
Favorite goal of the Vetch? Oh, Thomas' goal against West Ham.
Okay. Favorite ever player celebration?
Martin Thomas's goal against West Ham.
Okay. Favorite ever player celebration? Swansea player.
Andy Robinson's dance.
I'm sure you will be happy to hear that. Best or favourite away kit colours?
I like the current one for obvious reasons.
And we're going to talk about
current
that next.
third kit.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that next.
Yeah.
Favourite ever season?
Oh my goodness.
It's hard on the spot, isn't it, to think?
It's got to be the promotion season. The Premier
Okay,
League,
was that 2011?
Yeah, it's got to be that one.
Player you did not like to see on the team sheet? Oh,
That's offensive.
Our preference, like, you know, if it meant your favourite player was dropped, I don't mean to cause any offence, but, you know, maybe you're like, oh, I wish he wasn't starting.
Charlie Hardfield.
Oh, see, there's an answer. Player you cried when he left?
Oh, man. When Lee went to Bristol and Brits went to Sheffield United.
Good answers. Player who should have played more?
There's so many.
I know.
In that season where we played again, we got to the playoffs at Cardiff and didn't win, but we won the cup. I didn't feel that Truns and Roberto were used enough by Kenny Jackett. So that has to be my answer. Then they should have been used more. And I think had we would have got promotion. Whether we were ready for promotion to the Championship then is another story. But I still think we would have won that game.
Interesting. One former player that you would bring back to help us now in their prime?
Oh.
Well, there's so many to choose from again.
Well, he's playing for Sheffield United at the moment. He's their player. but
There's
I bring
two.
him back.
Which one of two? There's two.
Huh?
McBurney, was it?
Two. Who's the other one?
Brewster?
Oh, yeah. I forgot about him. No, McBurney.
McBurney. Do you know what? He was on our list of potential signings that we were going to discuss in the upcoming video because he's out of
Love to
contract
see
in the
Dan
summer.
James
So
as well. Dan James,
Yeah.
love to see Dan James back.
yeah, I know. I'd love that too. Okay, not many left now. Favorite goal ever against Cardiff City?
Every single goal against Cardiff City.
That's the best answer. And your favorite fan chant?
Do you know, I don't always understand what they say in. And I have to say, I say to Jules as the substitutions, I say, Jules, what they saying? And he often says, you don't want to hear it. You don't want to know. But I love that one of our own chants,
Yeah.
Whoever's name you put into that, he's one of our own. I think there's warmth in that chant, and there's passion from the Swans, there, and I love that chant.
A few of them currently in the squad that are on the receiving end of that as well. So we hear that,
Absolutely.
yeah, quite often. Okay, transitioning then. You mentioned your favourite kit was the third kit. Now, a little bit of background. I know this is maybe a little bit of an emotional part of the video, and I appreciate you for sharing this with us when we do get into it. So Swansea City have partnered with Maggie's as the club's charity partner this season. Maggie's provides support for many people across the UK, including in the Swansea region, for people affected by cancer, whether directly themselves or maybe due to close relationships with people who are affected as well, that might have been suffering. So this season, Swansea launched their third kit as part of the Tackling Cancer Together campaign in support of Maggie's, with a striking pink strip to help with raising awareness further about what Maggie's do and all the help that they provide to these people. So many fans might not be aware, because I know you recently spoke about it in a fan forum about your own experiences, but you yourself have had a battle with cancer for a little bit over a year now. And I'm glad to be able to share that you announced that you had the all clear in the fan forum, and that's obviously very good news, very positive news. We all are very happy to hear that, and I'm sure you're going to talk more about it in a second. You were very thankful to the support, and you were earlier on in the podcast as well, that the club provided you within this time. And I know they've got the link with Maggie's. I just want to know your story, really, and is there any link with the Maggie's link part of this as well? And is that part of the support they've given you? Just everything about your experience, really. I would love to hear your story here.
I've been close to Maggie's for years. I host their annual fundraising activities, and I've done other events, and we've got a concert coming up in the new arena in 3 weeks, which I'm going to host on the 3rd of December.
I was going to say Maggie's Christmas celebration on Sunday.
Yeah, that's the one. And we're looking forward to that. It's going to be great, Lots of Swansea and Welsh performers and then choirs, and it's just going to be a celebration of Christmas and a celebration of Maggie's. But when the club announced that they were going to do this connection with Maggie's and release the shirt, and they showed me the shirt, and I was sworn to secrecy, as everybody who'd seen the shirt was sworn to secrecy. And I was slap bang in the middle of my cancer treatment. I was diagnosed, I think it was a year last March. I was diagnosed, and it came from nowhere. It was a shock. I just had a blood test, and the blood test showed something. I had another blood test. Then I had a CT scan. Then I had an endoscopy, then a CT scan. And I had a phone call the day after the CT scan from a doctor saying, look, I know you were concerned. I know you were worried. So I wanted to tell you straight away. I've seen the images, and there is something there. I said, is it sinister? And she said, yeah. And she said, are you there on your own? And I said, my wife is here. She said, let me speak to your wife. And I had to have some biopsies. And I still... wasn't thinking, I went in for my biopsies, And I said to my wife, probably won't be home because I had a ticket for the Wales-Belgium game. I was going to have my biopsy where they kind of like drill a hole into your side, and I was going to. And they said to me in the hospital, where you going now after the? Because it is a day patient. What are you going to do tonight? I said, I'm going to see Wales-Belgium. And they went, no, 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 no. What if you start bleeding? I said, well, I'll go. If somebody pushes you, I said, I'll go in early and come out late. I'll be fine. And they said, no, you're not. And they wouldn't let me go until they knew I couldn't get to Cardiff to watch the game. 4 days later, I was in a field in North Wales um, filming an episode of an American series called Documentary Now, which is a comedy series written by the guys who write Saturday Night, one of the guys who write Saturday Night Live. It was a massive gig for me, and I wasn't going to miss it. And I felt fine. And then I went to see the oncologist, and my wife and I went in, and she said, "Look," she said, "you've got a kidney on your tumor. Sorry, a tumor on your kidney," and she said, "we can't cure it." And that was earth shattering because my only experience of cancer was my dad, my gran, and my uncle, all of whom had died of cancer. And she said, we can't operate because there are lesions on your lungs. So it's like secondary, so we can't do the operation to remove your kidney, which we would have liked to have done. So we put you on immunotherapy. Don't worry, she said, we'll manage it. We'll try to shrink it. If it doesn't work, there are numerous other treatments that we can put you on. So I was okay. And they put me on treatment. I had a CT scan. The first CT scan, she said, oh, look, she said, the tumor is shrunk. And you're starting your lungs are starting to clear. I had 3 months later another CT scan, and she said, "Look, the tumor has shrunk, the lungs have cleared. I think we could consider surgery." And in September, about 2 months ago, I went into Morriston Hospital, and they removed my kidney. And I'd had a CT scan 2 days before that operation, which apparently showed the only cancer in my body was on the kidney. The tumor on the kidney. So you take the kidney out and the tumor goes with it. And I've met with the surgeon since, and I met with the oncologist and had a letter that says there are no longer any signs of cancer in your body. So I'm still having treatment. You have to finish the cycle of treatment, and it means they're keeping an eye on you. And I'll have a CT scan later this month. And I carried on. I did pantomime last year, and on my day off I went for treatment, and that's no big thing because the only problem I had in pantomime last year, I was overweight, and since then, since April of this year, I've lost 4.5 stone, and I'm feeling fit, and there's no cancer in my body. That's not to say it won't come back, but that's not to say that any of us won't get cancer. And the club were amazing. And the Saturday before I went in for surgery on a Friday, the Saturday before, I was working at the stadium doing what I do, and Mal rang me and said, "Oh, can you come down to the Centenary Suite," which effectively was the boardroom. It's where the guests go. And and he said, "It's Esme Aldrich's birthday. She's 89, and Esme grew up in Plasmal, and they know our families know each other. And I grew up in Plasmal, and we wanted to sing happy birthday to Esme. So I went down. I had about 3 phone calls saying, Where are you? I said, I'd be down now. And I sang happy birthday to Esme, and then all of a sudden Mal came behind me with this massive box. And I'd had a phone call from Budget Carpets, Big Swans fan, a couple of days before, asking me for
a name.
Dyke Carpets. My wife and I are Lego fans. If you could see now, I'm in what used to be my daughter's bedroom before she left. And here at my office downstairs are full of Lego. We are adult Lego fans, And Dyke said, I'm asking, I want to buy some Lego for my nephew. And I said, oh, well, and I said, coming up now, because we just had my office converted and they'd supplied the flooring. I said, coming up to pay my bill anyway, so we'll have a look. And it was one of them was this massive Harry Potter train, which we hadn't done. I'm not a Harry Potter fan, but I love trains and building them. And I said, I go for that. I said, it's expensive. That's why we hadn't bought it. And I said, go for that one. And in that box that Mal was holding was that he didn't want anything for his nephew. They were going to buy a present for me. So himself and the guys from Swansea.com, Ian Morgan from the building company on the shirts, West Acres, and I think one of the guys from Owens, and Rob from Low Cost Vans, LCV now they're called. And they'd all chipped in and they bought me this for me to do when I come out of hospital, because I didn't go back to work for maybe 2 weeks. So my wife and I, that's how we occupied our time building this massive Lego thing, which is downstairs in the office.
So you got a big Hogwarts Express.
That's kindness, People didn't have to do that. I know these people care. Friends cared about each other. But that was a real random act of kindness, which meant so much to us.
Yeah. That's really good story, and it's so nice to hear how you've come through it, and obviously how the club pulled together and all the people involved doing that little thing, just to make your life that bit better, just to cheer you up, if you like, and all the rest of it. Is there anything maybe you can say to anyone else that might be going through their own battles at the moment that you would like to give them any words of encouragement?
Listen to what they tell you, listen to what the doctors, listen to what the oncologists, listen to what the nurses were. Remarkable people. God bless the NHS. I can't tell you how the NHS have been good to me, and I see so many people. I go for treatment once a month to the chemotherapy day unit. I'm not on chemo, but it's administered there, my treatment, and these are remarkable people. And I have to say, people don't always see what the commercial department, and I think the official title is Fans Engagement Officer, Catherine Thomas and Sophie, who works for her, and Lee Merrills and the guys in that department, what they do for people, who are going through tough times. They make sure that they get some sort of experience or present for them, and I'm proud of them, and I'm very proud of Maggie's and Andrea, who kind of looks after the commercial, the shop side. She does the deals to who's going to supply the kit and picks the kits and stuff like that. And it was Andrea's idea to initially to have that pink kit, and the club immediately got on board, and Ben and the media department and the commercial department became supportive. And it was because people within the club had cancer long before my time. And when you see the stories then online, and I'm going to do an interview with Sophie Davis, who I've got a lot of time for. Sophie's one of the media team who does the interviews on match day, and we're going to chat about it, I think, after Christmas. And, there's a lot of people. The number since I've gone public, and I didn't want to go public because I didn't want it to become the issue. I didn't want it to be finds me as a person, but I never hid it from anybody. People saw me having treatment and went home and told their family that I was there. And one dear fella went home. She said, "What did he say?" Well, he had the last cheese and onion sandwich. I wanted that, and that was lovely. That made me smile. And there have been moments where I'm not going to share them, but where a little bit of banter with people has made people smile. And I got a lot of time when I just put that back in. And people go through things every day, and I'm not the only one. There's so many people go through this experience every single day.
I think it's that age-old saying, isn't it, about when you go through a tough time, where humour and a bit of laughter it's got a place, isn't it, in helping you get through it. And it's not always correct, but I think it's definitely important when things get tough to help you get through those tough times. But yeah, touching story. Really glad you were able to share that, and I'm sure a lot of people listening, will take some sort of encouragement and some sort of good feeling from what they've heard.
Humor got me through it. My faith got me through it. but family and friends, people got me through it.
Yeah.
Nobody would,
Kindness.
kindness. Nobody would ever let me believe that this was the start of the end.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with people. When I found out, I even thought, will I see Christmas? And I I said to my wife, uh, go into my pension fund, um, and withdraw some money from that, and we take. I took the family to Euro Disney because I wanted to build memories. I wanted to go away with everybody, and uh, we did that. We did that, but now yeah, I'm fit as a fiddle. I'm at the best of health that I've been in, and I thank everybody who's played a part in that, whether they be friends who've motivated me, the football club that has motivated me, and those incredible people who work in the hospital, who are just amazing, amazing.
I can't imagine how it must feel when you first hear the news, because the stigma around what it is must make you feel that way, like you just mentioned, that maybe it is going to get to that point. But your story here just highlights how important it is to not give up and to keep fighting. And,
Please
you
never
know,
give up. Never give
yeah,
up. There's always hope.
yeah,
Never give up, and never be positive. Always be positive, and surround yourself with positive people. Don't let the
yeah.
negative people in the door. Don't let them in the door.
No, that's definitely good advice.
You know, like
So no, no, it's good. It's great to hear. And for anyone that wants to hear more, as Kev's just said, you're going to have an interview, maybe discussing further in detail
so I'd
in
like
the
to
new
do
year.
I'd like to
Yeah.
do that. I'd like to do
So
that.
keep your eyes peeled. I'm guessing I'll be on the Swansea channel then, or
I'd like to do that. Yeah.
yeah. I look forward to that as well. I hope that does happen. It'll be something definitely I'd be interested to listen to and watch. But yeah, once again, thanks for sharing that. I know an emotional time, but also a bit of a feel good story as well, and something that a lot of people I hope can relate to and take inspiration
Yeah.
from. If they're going through similar things themselves. But you've made a career out of giving feel good feelings to people of Swansea. So if we can maybe touch on some of that now, for the second part, and maybe not as long as the football stuff, but we'll see where it goes. But pantomime obviously is where the biggest part of that is when it comes to Swansea. Many people will know you from the annual pantomime at Swansea Grand Theatre, and you're there again this year. I did pick up a leaflet, but I forgot to grab it now. So if you can remind me what the performance is this year. Is it Cinderella?
It's Cinderella. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Cinderella.
And am I right in saying AJ Pritchard is one of your...
AJ Pritchard, yeah, and his brother Curtis. They're
Yeah.
with us. One was on Strictly, one was on Love Island, apparently.
Was one on I'm Celebrity as well, in the castle? I
Possibly.
believe so. I believe so. A couple of years ago when they did it in North Wales. But anyway, what I was going to say is obviously people know you from the pantomime in Swansea. You've done it
Yeah.
all through my childhood. You were there. I think, remember asking my parents, why is there a man dressed up as a woman? And every year,
You
like,
wouldn't find any woman wear the costumes I wear. Trust me. I've worn flower pots, bumblebees. I've come on as a dressing table with, no woman would wear those costumes. But I understand what you would have thought as a youngster.
yeah, but it's funny though, isn't it? But you ask your parents that question because you're like, hang on, what's going on here? This is like, I don't understand. But he's making me laugh. But I just wanted to ask, like, where did that begin? When did you realize or know you were destined for a career in that sort of entertainment and making people laugh? And how did you feel like this was what you wanted to do, really? Like, where did that all begin?
It was always what I wanted to do. I always wanted to be a performer. Um, but I went to Bible college and trained for the ministry, and was a minister in just outside Toxteth in Liverpool, and worked in Birkenhead. I was then in North Wales for 3 years, pioneering a new church there. And then I moved back to South Wales with a national brief. My job was to travel all over the country and help churches that were struggling and needed a little bit of a boost. And my work was kind of seasonal. There were certain times of the year I didn't do anything. So I started entertaining and performing again, just to pay the bills, really. And it kind of grew and took over. And I was doing summer season in the Grand Pavilion, Porthcawl, and Roger Price, who was the entertainment director for that authority, said, "I want you to do Panto for us next year." And I did Panto. My first one was Aladdin, and then I did Cinderella, and then I did 4 Panto seasons there. Then I did one at the Grand. I did a couple at Port Talbot, and I came back to the Grand in 1999, the Millennium year, and I've kind of been there ever since. And it does bring joy to people. I had a wonderful email last year thanking me. An aunt had brought her niece to the Panto, and the young girl's mother had been seriously ill, and she said, "You know what? It was the first time I'd seen her laugh and smile in a long time." So when you can touch people's lives like that, it's more than slapstick. It's more than color and costume and chaos and comedy. You're touching people's lives. You're making a difference, and that means a lot, when you can do that, and it's great fun, and it's bringing people into the theatre. Many children who come to pantomime, that's their first experience of theatre, and it's lovely to come and see them come as sometimes 5 generations, great grandparents, grandparents, mother, children, and children's children. They all come. And they say we always come on Christmas Eve, we always come on opening night, we always come on New Year's Day or on Boxing Day, and I say thanks for coming Boxing Day because I'm missing a fixture, and it's very special. It's very special. I'm in the dressing room with I've got Sky on the go on my mobile phone, and I've got radio commentary on a DAB radio, listening to how, watching how the things are going.
We've got Southampton this year, haven't we? That's a big one.
No, I won't miss that when we finish Panto with the Southampton game, so I'm all right.
Oh, okay, fair enough. I was going to say it's a big one, that is, with the former manager and all the rest of it. But touching.
I have to say that one of the first texts I had after my surgery and after everything had gone public was from someone who knew I had cancer, but one of the first texts I had saying how great it was from Russell Martin.
Well, there we go, and that shows.
I just have to say that.
No, that's fair enough. We've often talked about Russell and his connection with the club, the fans, how real was some of it, but that's as real as it could get, I guess. And yeah, I can't really say anything else to that. That shows maybe true colours of who he is, and really nice to hear that.
I'm just putting that in the mix.
Yeah, I did mean to ask you about him earlier, but I'm glad that you've got that in there. So, but yeah, thanks for that. And back to the pantomime, definitely making a difference to people's lives who come and watch you. Like my son is 2 now, 2 in a couple of months, and I'm like, is he going to sit there for the full thing? I do want to take him. Like, is it the year or next year? But I'll definitely be there soon, coming to watch.
My grandson came last year, a day after his 3rd birthday, and he sat through the whole thing.
Maybe we'll give it a go. Definitely next year, if not. So.
Next year.
Yeah. But it's something I definitely want to see. There we are, a scoop there next year. Jack and the Beanstalk. I don't know if that's been announced yet, but has it?
Well, I hope it has. I think it has. It has.
I don't know. I haven't seen, but maybe it has. I didn't look as far ahead as next year.
Pepsi Max.
I'll investigate before I put the episode up, and I'll cut it out otherwise. But yeah, so maybe Jack and the Beanstalk next year then. So. But I look forward to it because I feel like it's that fun thing to do, as a family, and
it's special.
Every year, like an annual thing. Christmas time is that time of year where you want to do those sort of things, and I'm looking forward to it as my first one as a dad. So, yeah, I hope I'm sure you'll still be there next year, and I can't wait to see it. So,
I'll be there next year, at least.
Oh yeah, I just meant in terms of
I
like
will
you're
be there next year. No.
in the casting. Sorry, and that's
Yeah, I
probably
know.
sounded a bit.
I know. I know for a fact I'll be there next year. But and I'll say now I know, but I know.
It will definitely not be the same without you anyway. That's for sure.
Oh, do you
So
know what? They, when Ryan Davis passed away, everybody said Panther wouldn't be the same without him, and do you know what? It wasn't. But you know, but it creates it. Then there was Kenny Smiles, and Panther theatre creates its own heroes, and you're always. I always say you're only as good as the last job you did, and the Grand is special. The Grand is
yeah,
the star, and what a wonderful theatre it is. And but it's nice to work there.
obviously I mentioned earlier on 31 years of doing Panther, and not all in the Grand. You must have some highlights in terms of some of the actors that you might have
Do you know
acted
what?
with. Any highlights? Anyone specifically that stands out that you maybe can share a little bit of a story with us about?
Jimmy Osmond. Jimmy became a real friend, and I did two Panthers with Jimmy and Mike Doyle. Mike and I knew each other anyway, but Mike and I love working together. Matt Edwards, who's in the Panther at the moment, but Sue Pollard, Gillian Tailforth, who plays Kathy on EastEnders. She became a great family friend and a sister as well. And Vicky Michelle, Vicky and I are still in touch with each other, and through social media. And both went to Buckingham Palace on the same day together some years ago. So people are very rarely. People say, well, anybody you not like working with. Do you know what? No. And if you don't click with somebody, and that sometimes happens in life, then just move on and
Yeah.
say goodbye, and and that's it.
Do you know what? Some people will think that you've maybe seen the script here because you mentioned going to Buckingham Palace, and I was going to say in 2013 you were on the MBE. You got an MBE for services to
Yeah,
charity in the Queen's
yeah,
birthday honours.
yeah.
So that must have been such a special moment for you as well.
It was a special moment for me and the family, and it is a special moment. And listen, I brought up in Plasmal, working class area. My dad was a tanker driver. My mother was a social worker, but we're a working class family, and had that Welsh working class work ethic, which is so important. So here I am, standing in front of the Queen with all the power of the Commonwealth behind her, um, receiving what I felt was not deserved. And I could name you 1,000 other people who I would have put above me, and it was just very very special. And it's funny. I I've never worn the medal. I've worn it once, and that was this month, and I wore it to host the service of remembrance at the Brangwyn Hall, and only because I was told you must wear it. And I said, "What do you mean you must wear it? There's no law." No, that is the occasion. Because I never wanted to wear it because I didn't want the people to think I was wearing a medal. These guys who had chests full of medals had flipping risked their lives to get those. I didn't want
Yeah.
anybody to think that. I did a bit of fundraising and things, and work for and charity, because I was brought up to do things for charity. My dad would do a full shift and then would drive an ambulance, a volunteer ambulance for the Multiple Sclerosis Society, or would drive it in the morning and then go on afternoon shift and drive to the far end of the country. So, but it was very special. It was very special. And Vicky
Yeah.
Michelle was there that day, and
Yeah.
tried to get me to hide an inscribed bucket of ballast glass in my sporran because I was wearing a Welsh kilt that day. She said, "Put it in there, put it in there." I said, "No, then take it off me. I won't be allowed to have a medal." But I met some very special people that day, including a guy who had won the Military Cross, and what his act of bravery was incredible. And they were the heroes who deserved to be there.
This is where you pull out that glass to take a sip of water.
Are you telling me you're
There we are.
it, it was This guy had run 400 yards. That's a full circle of a running track. 400 yards under fire from the Taliban to get a truck. And then he drove that truck back to his unit to rescue his unit and 4 Afghan national policemen. That is courage. And that he was the last guy that day to receive a medal, because there were MBs, OBs, CBs, British Empire medals, knighthoods, police medals, fire service medals, military medals. He was the last one, and the Queen spoke to him the longest, and rightly so. He was 24 years of age. Amazing.
That's incredible, and getting, maybe it seems you last why you last, but giving the highlight of what he did, and especially with the Queen speaking to him the longest, so definitely deserved. And yeah, I guess that's the sort of thing you want to highlight. But I wouldn't discredit your own work as well. Doing a lot for charity. You're well loved, as I've mentioned several times, in Swansea, and I think we all think you deserve that honour as well.
People are kind.
People are definitely kind. And people of Swansea have repaid that kindness to you as well. Recently, in 2022, where you've been honoured in Swansea as an ambassador to the city by being given the title of Freedom of the City, joining the likes of Catherine Zeta-Jones and Alan Wynne-Jones receiving this honour. So another honour for you. But how did this one come about, and how did this one make you feel? What does it mean to you?
When it was announced, I was almost horrified, really. I cried because I didn't want, I don't know, I didn't want maybe the attention, or I don't know. But it was a great honour, because possibly the greatest honour, because it was from your own city, and I love my city, and if I say I love Swansea, and somebody says, well, I love Cardiff, I love Newport, and if you're from those cities, so you should love your city. Wherever you're from, you should love it with all your heart. And same with our country. You should, I say I'm proud to be Welsh. Someone said, well, I'm proud to be English. If you're English, you should be proud to be English. You should be proud. My wife is Scottish. She's proud to be Scottish. And I'm proud to be Welsh, but I'm proud of my city. For the city to have done that for me was amazing, and but there are so many other people out there doing things, running food banks, looking after the homeless and the vulnerable in society, and so much activity, those who are going through mental health. This is 2023. People shouldn't have to go to food banks. Working people, nurses, teachers, people who work in the emergency services, because they're not getting enough now to pay their bills, their mortgage, or run their car, which they need to get to work, or pay for their kids' schooling, to pay for those trips. People are having to go to food banks. And it's wrong. It's wrong. And there are people every day, volunteers. They turn up at the food banks. They take soup around at night for the homeless. They are the heroes of society. And just because your work that you do puts your name, in a public situation, doesn't make you anymore. So I will do all that I can do to help them and support them by doing what I do. I remember Cliff Richard. Cliff Richard tells a story. I worked with Cliff in the 80s, and he tells a story that he'd gone out to the third world with an organisation called Tearfund, which I think he was president or ambassador for. And he was in a situation where nurses were giving injections to sick children. And he said, is there anything I can do to help? From the heart. And the nurse turned around and said, can you give an injection? And he said, no. She said, well, go back and raise money so I can give injections. So if that's what I can do, that's what I'll do. And, I will deliver food parcels. I've done that. I will do whatever. Trundle is magnificent at doing that. Trundle this week, he's spoken to a health and wellbeing group, which is a great group to speak to. I've been there, but he was at Matt Matthews' house, meeting the staff there who feed the homeless. Magnificent.
I think there's a lot that the club does, and obviously trying to be part of it, you're part of it as football perspective. But I know you do a lot more to charity stuff on a wider spectrum as well for yourself, and you're right in what you're saying about there's a lot of people that do this, and they're not always necessarily the name in the paper, and they don't get the recognition they deserve. But for me, I think for people who do have a platform, I think it speaks volumes when that platform is used for the right reasons to do what they can, even if it's raising awareness so more people know and more people can help and more people can get involved. And I think that's what you do ever so well. So I think, that sort of award is the recognition and highlight of doing that. You kind of empower other people to make a difference. And the more people that make a difference, the better the place it'll be for everyone.
Thank you. It's kind of you.
No, I think I think a lot of people will agree, and keep doing what you're doing. And I wanted to touch on one recent one that you've done. I'm sure you can talk about more examples if you'd like to. But you recently hosted a charity fundraiser at Old Walls. Now, I haven't got the detail about it. I just kind of wanted to ask, and we have touched on it there a little bit, but how important are these sort of events for you contributing to charity? And how has that made a difference to your life? I know you're making a lot of difference to other people when you're doing them, but what does it mean to you when you're doing these things as well?
That was a charity night organised by a young lady called Abby McNamara. Abby has cancer. She's in her early 30s. She is a beautiful person inside and out. Lovely family. And she had cancer. And she's doing okay. But she wants to put back and give back. So she put on a fundraising night, which was a magnificent night. It was just wonderful. And I'm not sure of what the money raised yet is. I think they're still adding everything up.
Yeah.
I thought that Old Walls, they put on a fantastic night. It was a great meal. It was just a lovely night. And funnily, it was a great honour for me. I had to say it. But one of the guests there was the nurse from the chemotherapy day centre, who was the first nurse that treated me. Obviously, since then, many nurses have treated me.
Yeah. Small world.
She was the first nurse that was treated me. She was on the table next to me, and I had to get up and in one of my speeches and wanted to say and acknowledge her as being the first nurse. And she was well known on Goa, and she was letting her hair down. And,
as you all should, enjoy yourself.
Oh, there was a few that night, and it was magnificent. It was great, and these people are magnificent. Incredible what they do. Incredible.
Is there any other notable? Like they're all going to be important. They're all making a massive difference. But you must have had a long line of history of events and charity fundraising activities you've been involved with. Have you got any that stand out as making them like the biggest difference, or just
everybody does, and all different type. I love doing the Maggie's balls, and I love working with Llysnynny. I'm what they call a vice president of Llysnynny, which is an award they give. And Joe Allen and his lovely wife, they are both great supporters of Llysnynny. And when you hear the stories of abuse and cruelty to dogs, and we have a rescue dog at home, and but the patience that is shown and given to them by the families that adopt them and bring them into their families. Do you know what? There are some bad people in the world, but there are more good ones. More good ones.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. Very, very true. And just to end this off, I'd just like to say we've only got, quite a small platform in comparison, but if there's anything we can ever do to help, if you're sharing, raising awareness, give me a shout and we'll be more than happy to do what we can.
Certainly do that.
Yeah, thank you very much. So coming to the end now, but there's one thing I want to ask before the end. It's a little bit funny. I did have a look at your CV because I know you're up on. You can grab it on the Mark Germain.
Yeah.
And I just had a look to see if there's anything in there, that I could use when talking to you and question prompters, if you like. And I came across a bit in the bottom part that said about your other skills. One of these other skills was magician. I just want to know, can you ever show us a little bit of magic down the Liberty Stadium? You know, maybe like when we're 2-0 down at half-time, sort us out, you know? Is there anything you
I
can
can
show
tell
us
you
in the
all.
half-time show?
I used to be a magician, a comedy magician.
Yeah.
All my magic was bought, and it was the skill level. You could take it home and do it, and but yeah, sometimes, man alive, if I could wave a magic wand, that referee would have disappeared. I can tell you now, he would never have been seen again. I've still got my old guillotine, which I would have head in there, bang, come down the guillotine, and I might not have flicked the switch. I would have flicked the switch, I promise you.
Yeah, don't clip that out of context.
No, don't take that out of context. Keep it in context. It's a gag. It's comedy.
Yeah. It's obviously, I mean, a magician never reveals the tricks, but we know no one actually gets injured in these things. But yeah,
my skill level, it was glaringly obvious how the trick was done, but no one ever gets injured. No one ever gets hurt.
yeah. I think we were talking about pantomime earlier, but I used to go and watch, as well as the pantomime when I was younger with my parents and family. The Chuckle Brothers used to come and do a tour that came down to the Grand every year, and there's a few of those things that were included in their shows, and I used to love them.
They were amazing. They had two brothers as well, who were called the Patton Brothers. Such a talented family.
Yeah, it's such a shame, obviously, with Barry, who's no longer with us, but I know Paul's doing the rounds. I've got family that know him quite well, so he's
Paul will still be in Panto this year. So
yeah. Where's he doing that now?
You know, you asked me that question. I don't know where he's gone, but he will be.
I could probably find out. My uncle is good friends with him. I know he's doing a lot of DJing now, and he helped him out with that side of his endeavours. So let's just say, but look, Kev John. So been a pleasure talking to you. Really enjoyed this chat. I know it's, well, I say dragged on. It feels like it's only been 5 minutes, but I can't wait to share this. I cannot wait to share this with all of our listeners. And I would maybe love to speak to you again in the future, and hopefully we get to chat maybe at some point in person in the future, and keep doing what you're doing, you know, because you make such a difference to so many people. Keep doing it.
And come on, the Swans.
Yeah, come on, the Swans, and I'm sure everyone will hear you down at the stadium after the international break, where we're going to get a win against Hull. I want to say Hull City. Yeah,
1 vowel away from L.
Indeed,
that was one of the best lines I've had in a play. Hull, 1 vowel away from hell. Think about it. You'll get it in the end.
Yeah, no, I get it. Hopefully that game isn't hell for us, and we do get a win, because I think we're going to need to bounce back after the last one. But that's us after the international break. So as always, for everyone that's been listening in this podcast, thanks for staying with us this long. I'm sure you've enjoyed it just as much as I have. But if you have got anything that you want to ask Kev, maybe in the future, if we ever speak again, let us know in the comments. And I can go and ask him, or we can maybe have another chat sometime down the line. And go and see him in the pantomime, because you won't regret it, and you'll be laughing all day, I'm sure.
I hope so.
Bless you,
happy Christmas as well.
Yeah, happy Christmas to you, and have Happy New Year as well. And
bless you, mate.